Good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Waimon from Fusang, and I'll be taking you through today's webinar that's organized by Labuan IBFC Inc. and Fusang Exchange. We're also pleased to have the support of Labuan Fintech Association, who has a number of speakers representing them in the webinar. And as you can tell from our topic, our discussion will center on digital financial services, or DFS, that ecosystem in Labuan International Financial Center. And what better way to kick off the session than to have a board member of Labuan IBFC Incorporated give us an overview of the financial center. And so for that, I'd like to invite Dato' Howard Chu, our board member of Labuan IBFC Inc., to say a few words. Over to you, Dato'.
Yes, thank you, Waimon, and good afternoon to all of you. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to this joint webinar hosted by Fusang Corporation and Labuan IBFC. This webinar aims to provide awareness of the digital ecosystem in Labuan International Business and Financial Center and the role of Labuan IBFC in connecting Asia's digital ecosystem. A distinguished team of speakers and panel experts will take you through this webinar over the next 1 hour. The keywords here are digital finance and Labuan IBFC digital ecosystem. To many of you, digital finance means cashless transactions and fintech platforms, replacing the traditional banking counters, ATM machine, debit and credit card, with the promise of a seamless and lower cost transaction. The use of blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies, and assets, as well as the meta contracts, are experiencing greater emergence and public acceptance. On the flip side, there are regulatory evolution on AML, CFT risk in digital finance, and AML controls over fintech environment. Financial crime risks are constantly evolving to challenge regulatory requirements across jurisdictions. Of significance, of course, is Labuan IBFC, which is undergoing a major shift to embrace digitalization in the new operating environment. Labuan IBFC started promoting digital financial services back in 2017 and now has an extended ecosystem of players in e-trading platforms, robo-advisors, digital banking, insurtech, tokenization, plus digital asset exchanges. The era of digital finance presents now a unique set of challenges to regulators and requires much broader and more innovative approaches to support such financial services of the future. In order to make Labuan IBFC as a leading destination in this global financial system value chain. With this, I hereby declare the webinar open and wish all of you a productive session. Thank you. Back to you, Waimon.
Thanks, Dato' Howard. Thank you for that quick remark, and you have helped us set the scene for today's discussion. Next, we'll move on to a presentation entitled Unlocking the Potential of Digital Assets via Labuan IBFC. And so I'd like to hand the session over to our speaker, Chong, CEO of Fusang.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see, I think there's over 100 of you gathered here today from really the entire Labuan ecosystem. I know there are a lot of people who are licensed entities in Labuan, and also a lot of people who are just interested in using Labuan as a jurisdiction to be that midshore financial center, to really help structure assets of all kinds. And thank you, Dr. Howard, for giving that incredible introduction of Labuan as a jurisdiction. My name is Chong, and I'm the CEO of Fusang. And Fusang is focused around using blockchain technology, but to encapsulate what we call real-world assets, shares, bonds, funds, etc., bridging them onto the blockchain as blockchain-based tokens so that we can bring together the best of blockchain technology and traditional assets and securities. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. We hear a lot about people, crypto, we hear a lot about tokenization, but what does that really mean for you as a licensed entity or as an asset owner? How can you really use the power of tokenization to unlock potential? And if you could jump to the next slide. And I've only got a couple of minutes today, so I'm going to whiz through this at whirlwind speed. And if you can go to the slide after this as well, please. I like to show, hopefully, this picture that's going to be coming up in just a second, because it looks like a whole lot of scribbles on a piece of paper, but this is actually one of the world's first ever share certificates, at least for a public company, a public IPO, if you will. And if you look carefully, this is from 9th of September, 1606. And it was issued by the Dutch VOC, effectively their counterpart to the British East India Trading Company. The Brits got started first, but the Dutch had this incredible idea of saying, what if we took shares in our company, where historically merchant voyagers were, that the investors in these things really were the merchants or the people going on the voyage themselves. And the Dutch said, well, what if we actually open this up? What if we have this idea of selling shares to the public? And by that, they meant, what if we just issued shares to people who had nothing to do with our company, but just wanted to come in as investors? And if you go to the next slide, since then, we've obviously come a long way in terms of what share certificates look like. This is Fusang Corp ourselves, back when we had paper shares. It's a set of incorporation. If you go to the next slide, you'll see effectively a share certificate of Fusang. And if you go to the slide after that, most of you will have seen something like this, a register of members, a cap table. And this is how we record company ownership today. We've got pieces of paper, or we've got something like what you're seeing here, basically an Excel spreadsheet writing down who owns which share certificate, what their names are, etc. And what I think tokenization allows is for us to jump, if you go to the next slide, to jump to something a little more digital. And at least Fusang's idea is, why not keep the essence of a security, of a share, for example, but leverage the power of tokenization? And what you can see here is a platform called Etherscan, actually run by Malaysians, if you didn't know. This is a public website that a lot of people use to interpret data on a blockchain called Ethereum. And what Fusang has done is we've taken all of our own shares, those paper shares you saw earlier, and we've tokenized it. We've converted them into these blockchain-based tokens so that we can, as I said, keep all the benefits of being a real share, but start to interact and manipulate these tokens in a digital way. You can actually go, if you type, I think, fsc.fusang.co, you'll be able to see this in real time online. You'll be able to see a log of transactions in our tokens, in our shares. And if you go to the next slide, we can, I think we're missing a slide there, but we can start to do things like build a picture of who has what allocations in shares, and really start to have something that is for the first time machine interactable. But in the next 10 minutes, I just want to whiz through quickly the types of tokens from a legal perspective. There's a lot of talk in the blockchain world about technology. And I think one of the issues with the fact that we started with something like Bitcoin as what I call a digital native cryptocurrency, if you see that first column on the left here, is that the technology and the token are intrinsically interlinked. And that's interesting, right? The idea of Bitcoin as a novel world currency is fascinating. At this point, Bitcoin is probably here to stay. Whether it actually reaches mass adoption, whether it really becomes the world currency remains to be seen. But as a proof of concept of what you can do with a blockchain-based token, incredibly exciting. But to me, the universe of tokens is much broader than that. You've got, for example, that second column that you see there, things like stable coins that are backed in some way or another by fiat currency, right? That could be a US dollar, could be a Malaysian ringgit, whatever. Some of these fiat stable coins are issued by private companies, and many of you will have heard of things like Tether and USDC. And of course, something like, I think 160 out of 185 countries in the world are exploring CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. same concept. How can I take kind of a representation of my national currency, my fiat currency, but encapsulate this as a digital token? You've got that third category of tokens, utility tokens, where they purport at least to be a pre-sale of goods and services. And they say, with this token, you can come and do something with my network or with my company. You can exchange it for a good or service. Almost, I guess, like a pre-sale of coupons. The interesting thing, of course, is now suddenly you can start to transfer these things from person to person. And it means that a lot of projects have used this concept to say, well, what if we almost treat this like Kickstarter on steroids? I can pre-sell the good or service that I want to create while also giving an incentive for early stakeholders who want to come in and participate in this network, in this ecosystem that I'm trying to build. You've got that fourth category there, NFTs, very much in vogue over the last year. I'll talk a little bit more about what that means on the legal sense. And then, of course, near and dear to my heart, that fifth category of security tokens. Tokens that effectively either represent ownership in a traditional security like a share or a bond or a fund unit, or they represent a wrapper of that underlying security, but they really don't change anything legally about, let's say, the nature of the share. It's, again, just a different format of recording data, of recording ownership. So we have tokens instead of a piece of paper. If you go to the next slide, moving swiftly on, maybe just to dig into each of these categories in brief, because again, a lot of people, I think, including regulators, including kind of licensed financial intermediaries, when they're looking at how am I going to interact with this whole digital asset space, it can be very easy to get confused with tech stuff. And I think the right place to start is by looking at, well, what exactly is this token legally? Where does it fit into this classification? And the technology should not change the way that my firm interacts with it. If I'm an investment bank who's used to dealing in securities, who's used to sponsoring deals, there's no reason why your workflow, the way in which you interact with that business needs to change. You just need to figure out a bunch of new tech stuff so that you can now interact with digital tokens instead of pieces of paper. And, you know, we talked about cryptocurrencies, right? These digital native tokens that exist only on a blockchain. They don't represent some assets sitting outside of the blockchain. And even within that, you can see how there are lots of different kinds of categories. Don't have time to dig into these categories, but I just wanted to highlight the fact that the legal relationships, if they change, how that token works changes a lot. So for example, you have that leftmost column, something like Bitcoin would fall into here as a kind of native currency. It's open to the public. Anyone can sign up to the network to use it, versus that third category of things like CBDCs, things that are sponsored by a government where they've taken their sovereign currency, swapped it out for a digital token, versus something like on the very right side, a tethered stable coin where, like Tether, where the token represents $1, but not issued by a country, issued by a corporation. And you'll see in this complex table, many of these are probably better characterized as debt claims, proprietary debt claims for the lawyers in the room. And obviously how that works is going to be very, very different from something like a CBDC. So things to keep in mind. If you can go to the next slide, please. Likewise, people have been talking a lot about NFTs recently, talking about, these tokens, these ICOs that people are creating that purport to be utility tokens. Are they really utility tokens? Are they a security in disguise? Well, it all comes down to, does this token actually provide some kind of use? Can I pay for something in a network? And number two, the investors who are coming and buying this token initially, are they buying it because of that utility, because they want to use it in a network, or are they buying it because they hope that it's going to go up in price, capital appreciation? And how regulators deem these things is going to really depend on that, including, some of you might have seen, LHDN recently published in Malaysia crypto tax rules, or at least guidelines. And again, which category you fall into is not going to be based on technology. It's going to be based by how is this token legally classified. If you can go to the next slide as well, please. NFTs, I think, are a perfect case in point of this. In the last year, a lot of people have said things like, you should invest in NFTs. as though NFT is an asset class. It's not. It's a type of technology. We've got fungible tokens, where one, like shares, and we've got non-fungible tokens, where it's one of one. Those tokens can represent pictures with no legal or proprietary claims whatsoever. Those tokens could represent, in time to come, things like land title, real assets. They could even be securities. So again, don't get caught up with the labeling or even the type of tech. What's important is to say, hey, does this represent a collectible, something like a baseball card that's cool to have, but has no intrinsic rights? If I buy this NFT representing an artwork, does it come with the legal rights, with IP attached? Am I allowed to resell those IP rights? All of this, you need to go and look at the legal contracting surrounding these tokens. And then if you could go to the next slide, please. Something that I suspect most of the audience here today is interested in, which is, okay, I am a licensed institution in Labuan, or maybe I own assets, right? I have structured vehicles in Labuan, whether as a company or a fund. What does tokenization mean for me? How can I use it to maybe raise funds for some assets that I own? Or if I'm an intermediary, right? If I'm let's say an investment bank, I'm used to doing traditional investment banking business. What does this mean for my business? I'm going to make money off this. And there's been a huge amount of discussion about security tokens, even in these last 3 months. No secret that the crypto industry has gone through a bit of a crypto winter. A lot of companies have had structural credit issues. Things have been imploding. And I think that all of this has made people start to ask one fundamental question, which is, hey, this token that I am holding, what exactly does it own? What rights do I get? What asset is it linked to? And of course, in many cases, the answer is it's not linked to anything. And that's why you've been seeing these things implode. But if we start to take these tokens and we start to move into what I like to call crypto 2.0, where we say, never mind the tech, how can we use tokenization to represent real assets, the same shares of companies that we've been investing in since 1606 and the Dutch VOC? How do we do it? And really, to me, the core takeaway is, and if you can go to the next slide, again, don't worry too much about the token. People like Fusang can help you with the tech. You need to first decide, okay, well, if I'm a company, am I going to issue shares, right? Let's say I'm fundraising, I want to issue 10% new shares. What do I do with it? Well, Labuan is a perfect jurisdiction because you've got a whole ecosystem of people who stand ready to help you in that process. As you can see here, obviously a combined regulator, and Labuan FSA has been incredible in terms of looking at all these things I've been talking about and doing exactly what I say regulators should, which is focusing on the underlying legal nature of these things as opposed to the technology. And they're very encouraging about doing things like security token offerings in Labuan, as long as you're crystal clear about what is that underlying asset. So if you're a company and you want to issue new shares digitally in tokenized format, that's absolutely possible to do right now in Labuan. And likewise, as I said, if you're on the other side of the fence, if you're an intermediary, if you're a licensed player, you can and should start thinking about security tokens, because soon I believe all securities will be recognized in tokenized form. It's just a new tech, like we move to online trading or the internet, but nothing's going to change about the underlying nature of those assets. It's a lot of complexity still in structuring. So if you're interested in some of these conversations, please do reach out to me or my team. One quick plug for the Labuan Fintech Association. As you can see in the bottom right of the screen there, for those of you who aren't already members, the LFTA is really at the forefront of trying to drive this wave of digitization and digital adoption in Labuan. So if you are based in Labuan as a company, please definitely get in touch. If you could go to the last slide in just a couple of seconds. Fusang, as I said, we are a digital infrastructure provider focused around bridging traditional assets into these blockchain-based tokens. And if you are interested in learning more about even just how that process works, right? I talked a bit about classification, but if you say, well, I have an asset, how do I actually turn this into a token practically? Do I do this natively? Is there a way that I can kind of wrap the underlying asset in the token without touching the original structure? The answer is yes, so get in touch with us. If you are someone who says, hey, I need to think about structuring things, right? I've heard that Labuan is a great jurisdiction. How do I do this? How do I set up vehicles to pool investors, to make investments? Get in touch with us. And likewise, if you're an intermediary, if you're a broker based in Labuan, if you help trade for clients, or if you're in an investment bank who helps advise clients, again, please do get in touch with us, because we, Fusang, we provide platforms. We operate an exchange in Labuan, obviously, but what we really need is an ecosystem. And that, I think, is how jurisdictions will do well and survive. When people can come, they know there's regulatory certainty, they know that there are players in the entire value chain who can help them from start to finish, and they know that these are things that they can get done today. So thank you very much for your time. I know that's been a huge amount of information all at once. If you go to the final slide, if someone can paste a link somewhere, I think you'll be able to see some of those slides, especially if you want to relook at those charts and tables. But thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Howard, for inviting me to come speak today, and looking forward to the panel later.
Thank you, Henry. Thanks for that brief but very comprehensive look into the world of digital assets. For our audience, for your information, we will have the slides from today's webinar ready for you right after the webinar. Our team will disseminate to you via email. So now let's take a look at the next presentation, which will go into the world of financial services, and it's entitled Bridging the Conventional and Digital Financial Services Chasm. So with that, I invite the next speaker, Dr. Gavin Lim, founder of HWGG Capital. Over to you, Gavin.
Hi guys, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here. And then of course, thank you to the Labuan IBFC, Fusang and LFTA team for organizing this and giving me the opportunity to share some insights and the development issues and also the opportunities in the industry right now. I couldn't say it better from our old friend Henry, right? He covered almost everything, but I'll try to look it on from a different perspective, which is from the digital financial services side. Now, just to have a brief look back, right? We understand that digital asset has been around since 2008, right? While digital asset is one of the main utility of what we call the blockchain. I'm pretty sure, within these past 10 years, there's a lot of development that has been going on that, people are starting to build more products and more financial services on top of blockchain. So if you can move to the next slide, please. Yes, so how blockchain came about is, since back then in 2008, people has been arguing over what we call the traditional financial system, which is under a centralized model of working, and also people start to explore what happened if we were to venture into a decentralized model, which is essentially what blockchain is about, right? This arose as we remember, 2008, between 2008 to 2010 of the US financial housing crisis. And some of the major banks, right? We are not talking about small banks or personal banks or private banks, but major banks has gone bankrupt, with the funds of the public. So this created what we call a trust issue on central bodies, centralized body, and people start to explore on towards a more community-driven kind of model, which is what we call the decentralized model. And the most of the difference is, of course, with the centralized body, all the decisions and all the data are being managed by one body itself. Whereas, in terms of the decentralized model, it's more towards it's controlled by like a network of computer with algorithm and approvals from all these network of computers, which make it, in a sense, make it trustless, right? You don't have to trust anyone. You just need to trust the algorithm and the peers of networks to do its work, to verify your transaction, to verify, let's say, your ownership of NFTs, and even like what our dear friend Henry say, certify the ownership of your shareholding. Now, can you move to the next slide, please? Now, as we all know, with the technology of blockchain, there are a lot of developments of products. Of course, from the traditional market, we have since then moved towards financial technology. And then, of course, now the latest topic in the industry is, of course, the decentralized finance, right? As you can see, some of the product sector that we are looking at, we are talking about issuing of money, transferring of money, lending, exchanging, and even investing. We have multiple platforms on that. What blockchain allowed was they allowed a lot of innovation on the traditional market to bring new platforms, new business model to come into the market with focus mostly on speed of use, and also the application process and all, and being able to control your own action, right? As you can see, from the traditional market, we have cash, banks, traditional banks, exchanges, stockbrokers, and of course with the fintech side, with the newer generation, the fintech side, we have mobile apps like Wise, Revolut, Lending Club for investment product, and Robinhood for the new gen trading. And of course with DeFi, we have whole way more products and technology for the industry, right? We are open to P2P, decentralized exchange, tokenized financial product, just like what Henry has said, tokenized or what we call shares and all. To further look into it, the main difference, to be honest, in the market right now, where people look in between the traditional market and also DeFi, one of the things that always come out in people's discussion is regarding the speed of the transaction, the availability of it. Because with traditional, what we call market product, such as banks, stock exchange, and all this and that. For example, let's take stock. I think we have a very good example here, because let's take stock. Stock, depending on which market that you are going into, let's say the States or even in Malaysia, you are only trading between 9 to 5, the opening hours of the stocks exchange. Whereas in terms of digital exchange, right, for digital shares or even for digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, these are open 24 hours a day, 365 days without stop, right? So the accessibility to this kind of services is, I would say, bring much more value to people. And of course, with the speed of transaction and the input of the personal data in connecting to the digital wallet and all, so all this actually separates two very different market right now. Whereas the traditional market is trying to catch up, and whereas we have the new modern market that is developing and also catering to the newer generation. So if you can, please move to the next slide. Yeah, so what happened here is that our group HWG Capital, we have been licensed from Labuan IBFC since 2017, just like what Dr. Howard mentioned. And since then, we have been focusing on the settlement, clearing, and also the payment sector of it. Because in terms of the sector, in terms of blockchain, we have several sectors that we can look at, be it insurance, exchanges, payment, and etc. Right? And here as HWG Cash, we focus more on the clearing, settlement, and payment side. And of course, since the evolvement from traditional banking to the blockchain-based finance, a lot of the discussion has been going on is that, of course, the transactions traditionally transactions are only being what we call transacted by the banks, and of course the cross-border payments, it will take very long as compared to the blockchain-based finance. However, I want to bring a point into the discussion is that while most of the what we call younger generation and also the up and coming generation sees digital asset or digital currency or even NFT as a store of value, we are still in this world whereby they are transitioning between the traditional market to the new market. Hence, it is very important for us to be able to bridge between these two, what they call it, the old money and the new money. Of course, with the old money, they are already an established business model, with their proper compliance, proper procedures and everything. Whereas in blockchain based, it disrupts a lot of this in terms of the speed, in terms of what we call the compliance procedure, and also the procedure of doing a transaction itself. while a lot of the younger generation see the store of value in digital asset, but the demand and the need in the market right now is still to be able to transfer what we call to convert, to bring it down to what we call on the level whereby the current world is still using, which is pretty much fiat market. Next, please. Now, my slides is very short because I want to bring this to the highlight of our audiences right here. We are currently in the chasm side of the cycle, of the whole cycle, you see. Now, we have started from the innovation part whereby, you know, it all started from exchanges, and then it came to, with prototypes of investment products, NFTs and all this and that. Now we are at a very important stage of the cycle per se for the full adoption of the market of the solution. Now, what people are looking at in the market right now is a full-fledged product solution, be it in terms of investment, payment, or even, I would say, insurance, right? However, whatever it is, we still require a connection in between these two markets to make the transition easier, right? While a lot of what we call the blockchain finance brings a lot of convenience, there are still some issues with what we call being compliant with the regulatory body that is working to it. Obviously, Labuan FSA is one of it. There are certain requirements that we need to meet before we can transact, you know. And of course, whatever it is, even for example, like now, a lot of people see Bitcoin as a form of investment, and they buy it for investment, but before they can realize the gains, they need to sell it off. And of course, at the end of the day, they need to transfer it back to fiat somehow in the world market right now, right? So that is the bridge that we are trying to address. And I think this is very essential because with regulatory bodies like Labuan FSA, who is open to talking to industry players and understanding what's happening with the industry, we can definitely make this transition faster, happening faster rather than later. Now we are in the middle whereby people is looking a lot on the whole product solution. Again, I emphasize on whole product solution is because now no longer people are previously, I think I would say 3 to 5 years back, people are still learning about the industry and the product. They are okay with going to multiple platforms to do multiple things. For example, I might go to I might download a digital wallet just for the wallet service, and then I'll subscribe myself to an exchange just for the exchange service. And then I'll have to go to another investment website for the investment product. And the question comes in is that why would the new generation, with access to all these digital stable coins like USDT and all this, why are they not able to make payments or even, for example, make payments for their groceries, right? It is because part of the reason is because they are lacking what we call the bridge in between. So if you can you please next slide, please? Yeah, so what HWGC's role is doing right now, just for the audience market to get a grip of what our role as a bridging partner to these two industries is doing. We are trying to bridge between the traditional market and the digital financial market by complying to both sides' needs and wants. Now, we are fully regulated, as I mentioned earlier, since 2017, and we have been working closely with the authorities for the upcoming what we call oversight of new regulations. We are providing feedbacks and all this. One of the things that we always face with our clients right now is that we cater to merchants, normal merchants that is selling cars, that is selling property, and the demand in the market right now is that people have some of the younger generation actually generated that wealth from digital asset, and with that they would like to purchase, let's say, a home, right? But whereas property developers might not be comfortable receiving digital asset because first, they do not understand about it. They don't want the risk associated with it. And for their business purposes, they still need cash. They still need fiat. So what we do is that we bridge these two markets together by providing what we call the necessary compliances to the banks that we are working with. We are working with several banks, investment banks, payment services providers, and also funds to provide them with what they need in order for them to be able to make the settlement or clear it to the product. And also for the next one is that to also interconnect it to the digital financial services like exchanges per se, exchanges, DeFi companies, liquidity providers, and blockchain company. Now, what I mean, I understand sometimes when I talk about this, it's a bit too technical, but in a layman term, we are trying to enable traditional merchants, traditional businesses to be able to open up a new channel of payment for their services without having the risk of the digital asset exposure, or even with the what we call the hassle with the clearing and everything. So I think with this, we have developed since then, we have developed a lot of procedures in compliance to the regulators and also our working banks to provide them with the necessary compliance document that such as KYC for individuals, KYB for businesses, and even now we implement KYT for digital transactions. To be able to track digital transactions. So I think this is very essential because even now with banks and payment services provider, as you can see what's happening around the world with banks like Citibank, JP Morgan, and even Master, they are acquiring companies in this sector to venture into this industry with to combine their existing client base to be able to get access to all these products. So I believe now where we are standing right now is that alongside with the Labuan players, we are actually providing a value-added service rather than trying to change the whole world into the modern world itself. We are actually providing a value-added chain and combining both the traditional market and the new market. Now, next slide, please. Yes, that ends the presentation here, but I would like to emphasize on one thing is that as our industry is growing, we are actually working very closely with the regulators and industry players as well, like guys like Fusang, the InsurTech, and even the players in Labuan. And we are very happy that Labuan IBFC, Labuan FSA, as a jurisdiction itself, looking into this industry and trying to bring more players in. This is why us, as a part of the Labuan Fintech Association, encourages a lot of new fintech companies to join us so that we can run this journey together and hopefully much longer to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Gavin, for giving us a different perspective into digital finance. So let us now move onward to a panel discussion for a more interactive format. So we like to invite questions from the audience, and if you have any, please put them into, type them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panel moderator, and she is Farah Jaafar, Managing Director and Chief Communications Officer of Fusang. And Farah will be joined by Mr. Adrian Tay, the Chief Operating Officer of Malayan Holdings Group, as well as Ganing Chek, partner of GLT Law. We will also have Henry and Dr. Gavin, our earlier speakers. So with that, I'll hand the session over to Farah.
Thanks, Waiman. So nice to see everyone here today, and thank you, my fellow panelists, for joining us. Really, in my last life in Labuan IBFC Inc., we've seen such a huge growth in the digital space, and it's really encouraging that the regulator, Labuan Financial Services Authority, is taking such a keen look and focus in developing this area. I mean, and I know for a fact that on the 4th of October, Labuan IBFC will be having a session focused specifically on Islamic digital financial services and opportunities within Labuan. So please have a look out for that. Keep an eye out for that event. Come and join us if you're in KL, in Sasana Kijang. I think it'll be a fantastic opportunity to really explore Islamic digital financial services. It's really the ability to bring the two powerhouses of Labuan, Islamic financial services and digital financial technology together to create an even stronger proposition for the jurisdiction. Thank you for the presentation from Henry and Dr. Gavin. And I'd like to really start the whole panel by asking a generic question to everyone. How has Labuan facilitated the growth of your business specifically? Is it the ethos? Is it the ecosystem? What is it that actually assists in the growth of your business? Can I start with maybe Adrian?
Hey, hi, Farah. Thanks for the question. Of course, Labuan's as a very favorable regulation and framework is the key thing that's helping us like doing our digitalization innovations. Yeah, I believe the rest of the speakers have the same thoughts. If I recall, my last experience with regulators on this digitalization efforts and innovation that our group trying to do, they are very kind to invite us to their office for at least 2 hours discussion to understand the law as much as possible and the rest of the works about.
Yeah, so it's a lot of it has got to do with the regulator. Would you agree, Henry?
Absolutely. Well, to me, there are really two main benefits in Labuan. The first is the ecosystem, as I said. Don't underestimate the importance of having all of these service providers, not only the kind of traditional digital players, people maybe like Fusang. You need banks, you need lawyers, you need company secretary firms, trust companies, the whole gamut. And obviously, number two is a key part of that is the regulator, as we've been talking about. And to me, the most impactful thing that LFSA has done is to say, we're not going to get caught up in the technology. We're going to look at what these assets actually represent. If something is a digital share, I'm going to apply the same rules that I apply for any share. And that to me is what's really unlocked this whole wave of innovation.
Yeah, and the ecosystem is something that's truly extremely important. How does a Labuan intermediary get involved in Fusang's ecosystem, by the way?
Go find that email address we showed earlier. I think it's called business@fusang.co. But very seriously, as I said, we as an exchange by definition are there to anchor an ecosystem, right? We're not here to trade assets. We don't create or sponsor assets. So come get in touch with us if you are someone who thinks that they can take your existing business, as I said, if this is what you already do for a living, for example, as an investment bank, and happy to have a conversation around how we can help you on the tech side so that you can continue doing that business, but in the blockchain world.
Yes. And Dr. Gavin, you spoke earlier about facilitating the ecosystem, the Labuan ecosystem. How does HWGG Bank do this?
One of the things is, of course, with Labuan FSA, they have always been very open to understand, at least, to understand the business model that we're trying to do and, to advise us on this. Bearing in mind, like what Dr. Howard said earlier, we started in 2017 when it's still fresh out of the gate,
yes,
right? When essentially, I would say regulators around the region or even in Asia in general is still not looking at all these new tech companies yet, and they do not have the proper guidance for that. But with Labuan FSA, we are able to do so. And then, of course, with our banking partners, like what I said, I've been bringing in banking partners and we've been working with banking partners. But because of our credibility as a licensed entity of Labuan FSA, they are more than happy to work with us. And with that, we are able to bring them into the Labuan ecosystem to cater to not only to us, but only to the whole Labuan Fintech ecosystem as a whole.
So the perennial question of corporate bank accounts and the hardship and tears and sweat towards it, it's all vanished?
I wouldn't say it's all vanished, because at the end of the day, a lot of people understand now to get a bank account for a fintech company or even for a blockchain company worldwide is very hard, right? But with the right partners looking at the same sector as you, the conversation is much easier.
Yeah, you're speaking the same language, I guess. It's always easier. Minchek, as JLT Law, obviously one of the leading legal firms in the digital space in Malaysia, how have you seen the ecosystem grow, number one? Number two, what do you make of this new revised AML CFT parameters by the regulator?
Hi, Farah. I would think that the main benefit of doing business in Labuan is the facilitative approach taken by the regulatory bodies. When it comes to new business offering, like digital offering, there are a lot of uncertainty for new players coming in the market with their new business model.
Yeah.
Of course, if there's more business activity in the market, there will be more businesses for everyone in the ecosystem, be it lawyers, accountants, trust company, or even the regulatory body themselves. So we actually think that a facilitative approach in a licensing regime that has indeed benefited all stakeholders in the ecosystem. And since 2017, we've seen the dynamic growth in the numbers of new players coming to the market with new business model, notably in the digital asset space. It was during which the ICO boom happened and the interest in digital assets spiked. As always, legislation needs to play catch up, and it takes time, especially in a space where new technology is used or even misused. But all in all, we will say is that the facilitated approach taken by IBFC has been the key reason that drives the economic growth of Labuan for the past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think if I recall, the roadmap that was launched earlier this year did mention digitalization as a key enabler across all industry verticals within the jurisdiction, number one. Number two, are we talking about 80, 90 licenses now in the jurisdiction in the digital space, which is tremendous. I don't think there's any other jurisdiction in Asia close to that, to be honest. But what I wanted, and also just another thing, because we've got so many people on this call, obviously there is a lot of interest in the space. And, I would really encourage everyone to come and join the Labuan Fintech Association. Now, the Labuan Fintech Association, unlike other associations in Labuan, is not limited to license holders in this space, right? Because we understand that digitalization is just a means towards an end. It is not necessarily an industry unto itself. It is an industry that touches every other industry within it. And so we welcome everyone from, in box standard, legacy, conventional insurance players to banks to come and join us. Membership is free. And what we'd like to do is really, create an ecosystem where we can feed off each other, have cross-pollination of business between the different players in Labuan using a digital platform. We have actually a question that's quite interesting from the floor, and I wanted to actually ask Henry what his thoughts are with regards to this. And it's a question from Omesh Hatani, and it reads: what if investors and shareholders are not keen on tokenizing their shares? Would this hinder a company to set up a brand new entity in Labuan? We could only set up, I'm assuming, a subsidiary company in that case. How would this work, Henry?
So I'm going to guess at your meaning of the question here, but number one, you don't have to use tokenized shares in Labuan. You're free to obviously issue paper if you want to. But if you mean, what if I've got a company and I've got 10 shareholders, maybe only half of them are on board, what do I do then? The nice thing about tokenization is that there's a lot more flexibility in terms of how exactly we structure those tokens. Labuan has unique laws such that we can have a token directly, what I call natively represent a share certificate. So that's an option. You can do what Fusang has done and tokenize all of your shares. But the other option is you just take part of your shares and you wrap it into a token. Again, happy to chat on, someone will find an email address for you and we can chat offline about how exactly to do that legally. But I think that right there, the ability to say, well, I want a token to represent something real, but now I can decide, what does that mean? Is it the share directly? Am I wrapping a pool of shares? Am I wrapping some kind of contractual interest? That's where tokens get very exciting.
And you can tier shareholding benefit, right? Shareholder classes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you talked about a subsidiary as well. That's possible too, if you want. Again, to me, tokenization is tech, right? The question is, can I do this legally in the first place? And yes, in Labuan, you can.
Yeah. And, just as a follow-through question, there's another question from Andrei Kolmogorov. I'm sorry, please excuse my pronunciation. He says, which other blockchains or ledgers could be used by Fusang for tokenization or business token issue aside from ETH and Kinesis?
Yeah. In theory, our platform is blockchain agnostic, right? So if you've got a favorite blockchain in mind, let us know. In practice, the truth is the vast majority of certainly security token issuances being done today are still on Ethereum. A lot of press written about the drawbacks of Ethereum, the use of the network. But to me, there's also a lot to be said for the fact that, hey, it's been time tested. Lots of people have done token issuances on it. To me, the real key of any blockchain used for securities is, number one, is it clear to everybody that there's what I call identity mapping. So you know who owns that token as an issuer. You can fulfill your KYC obligations. And number two, have you sorted out what exactly the token represents legally, right? So if I'm an investor, am I crystal clear about what I get with that token? And quite frankly, to me, that those are much more important questions to ask than the actual blockchain itself.
Yeah, and Andre, you've got a follow-up question talking about Algorand protocols in Fin, Stellar, Ripple. Let us get back to you because there are quite a few questions on tokenization and asset quality. Someone will come back to you with regards to this and pick up that question. Yes, Andre, I hope you bear with us with this. With regards to this, because there is another question that I wanted to also pose, and I'm sorry, Henry, just to focus on you because the questions seem to be on STOs. Can tokens be paid for in cryptocurrency or combination of fiat or crypto? That's the first question. And this question is from Rodney Kerr. And the other question is, can the offer of STOs be made to all investors, including overseas investors? And, you know, I think embedded within this question is that interesting conundrum of jurisdictional issues vis-a-vis digitalization.
Yes. I mean, look, I'm not the lawyer in the room, so maybe I'll defer to Ming Check as well. But like I said, to me, when you're looking at this from a legal perspective, start by saying, what is this token exactly? So is this an STO of a private share offering? Just follow the usual private share rules in Labuan. If this could be done with paper, you can do this with a token. In terms of paying in crypto and fiat, yes, that's possible, but you need to obviously pick a base currency for your company for the offering. So you'll need to find someone who can help you with that conversion. Again, those are operational issues. To me, the starting point needs to be what is this token and what are the existing rules that are in Labuan around the offering of this token. As I said, maybe I'll defer to Ming Check as the real lawyer in the room.
Yes, Ming Check, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, thanks, Ronnie, for the question. In terms of receiving crypto for STO projects, I would say that the short answer is yes. You can receive in crypto or combination of fiat or crypto. But I mentioned earlier, Labuan adopted a facilitative approach, means that whenever there's a new project, whether it's STO or issuance of a utility tokens, the regulatory bodies would actually have a regulatory sessions with the issuer or the potential issuer on using a toolbox basis to assess whether the projects require any specific license or approvals under the existing regulatory frameworks, and also to assess the business model of the issuers to see whether the projects can actually accept payments other than fiat. And so far, we know that there are projects in the market in Labuan that can accept crypto and in combinations of fiat as well.
Is it a fixed combination? Does it have to be fixed, or could it be an arbitrary combination between fiat and crypto?
Yes, I think it really depends on the models of the issuers. If the value could be fixed, then there's a process in place to determine the value when you receive crypto. Then that's all right.
Right. And I just wanted to also bring in Carlos's question here. You know, maybe Ming-Che, you can respond to this. Can you please give us more details about the DD, due diligence process for DeFi projects? Is this running internally, or you use a third-party service? How would that work? Or is it completely up to the promoter?
For DeFi projects, maybe Gavin, you can share more about the DeFi project, because from legal perspective for DeFi projects, if there is a local entity incorporated, then of course the usual due diligence process will kick in. We'll do the legal due diligence, financial due diligence. But for DeFi projects, it's very, very different from how we see traditionally, because everything is decentralized.
Sorry, but legally, I just wanted to be clear that legally, there's no hard and fast rule, as it were, right?
Yes, that's right.
Gavin, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big confusion in the market right now. DeFi, is a decentralized finance. You can run at it as a project itself, but I don't think any company would be owning the DeFi project. If that's the case, it's back to centralized again. So you got to look into perspective, whether it's run independently or centrally. So that's a big thing that you need to look at in order to differentiate.
Right. So really, it depends on the project, and it's quite flexible in that sense, I guess. But definitely, DD is key. Asset quality is key. At the end of the day, like someone mentioned earlier, the basis and the values of fundamental quality of an asset or fundamental value in a transaction does not it's not diluted in any way. It's just the way it's presented and the way it's shared and the way it's I guess managed is different. Adrian, I wanted to bring you into the conversation a little bit here, please, because I know for a fact that the insurance industry is such a key vertical in Labuan, more than 200 license holders. It's huge ecosystem, huge ecosystem. How do you find the insurance industry adapting to digitalization, and where do you see the most value add for digitalization vis-a-vis the reinsurance industry or the risk management industry in Labuan?
Sure. To answer these questions, once we look at in terms of competitive landscape in the digitalizations. Today, you see a lot of pure technology player or OEM. They become an insurance provider by the way of embedding a simple insurance product into their core products. So this creates a risk of these intermediations and loss of this customer interface by these traditional insurance players. Also, they don't have a physical branch or office in most of the cases, in which they're able to have a very effective cost structure, which instead created a lot of margin squeeze to the traditional insurance player. So, based on this kind of environments, just how Gavin talking about DFS, decentralized financial systems. If for insurance perspective, we are looking into is like decentralized insurance protocol. This is one of the way that to make insurance fair and accessible. Because under the blockchain environment, most of us is aware that under decentralized, you consider as a trusted platform. So under this DIP, instead of DFS, this ecosystem is supported by so-called a product builder. You have this risk pool keeper, you have the reseller, distributor. In fact, to the extent you have this claim adjuster and as well underwriters, who everyone sit inside this platform or in other terms called ecosystem. So at the end, once these are connected as an ecosystem, the entire flow and efficiency will run very so to call through the decentralized and very smooth and seamlessly. This is what the new generation, which is very technology savvy, they are looking forwards and in terms of efficiencies.
Yeah, I think from my understanding from the Fintech Association of Malaysia anyway, I think the combination of blockchain technology together with smart contracts really does make a huge change in the way insurance is managed by the issuers and also marketed, because obviously the inclusion element comes to the fore once you're able to really bring down the cost of risk.
Right. Yes, that's why it also gel very well to the most of the government's initiative to have this effort called protection gaps, the narrowing protection gaps. So micro insurance is one of the very simple product that's acceptable.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to just ask maybe Gavin or Ming-Chat or even Henry or Adrian, anyone here. It's a question from Kim, and Kim is, I know Kim, and Kim is watching us from Mauritius at the moment. Thank you, Kim, for making the time. She says, hi, I know that for crypto transactions, the note was that KYC is not required for the trade. However, how will Labuan manage the new travel rules? So it's the vast travel rules for crypto assets. Does anybody have an answer for that? Because obviously we don't have a representative from the regulator here. But yeah, it's a question of time before the travel rules start to kick in, no? Anyone want to take a jab at this?
I think I can take that because I'm in the payment space.
Yes.
Yes. Partly when you say about KYC is not needed, I would say that is happening with a lot of platforms. But being a regulated entity here in Labuan, there are what we call weekly or even monthly reporting that we need to submit to the authority, which we need to conduct the proper KYC, KYB, and even now KYT, know your transaction, of the whereabout from the digital asset is coming from. Because before we can, as payment solution, what we do is that even though we can help convert from crypto to fiat to crypto, we need to properly know who we are dealing with. And with this, we implemented proper, what we call KYC and KYB procedure in order for us to be able to transact. Or else, well, there are a lot of things happening around the world that is without KYC and KYB, and I would say take caution on that. But yeah, with regulated entities here in Labuan, is definitely we are required, right, to submit a monthly report on all our transactions and all our users upon queries. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that you can look at.
Yeah, and I know for a fact that the FATF is obviously keen on and has been spearheading the travel rules, but I've heard that also the Financial Stability Board is now looking at consumer protection vis-a-vis this space. So, obviously it's, there is a movement coming to the middle, as it were. The days of digital players being seen as cowboys are no longer for sure. And everyone is clear that, this is the way forward. We have 2 minutes left, and I really just wanted to ask all of you, and we don't have any more questions coming in, so just want to ask all of you a very simple question, right? What is your one wish? We're already into October, and to be honest with you, time has really flown by this year. I think all of us catching up post-COVID and all the rest of it. But what is your wish for 2023 vis-a-vis digital industry, vis-a-vis Labuan, and what are your hopes and aspirations? Any one of you want to start? Henry, do you want to go first? I see that
Absolutely. Well, to me, my one hope is that we finally get into what I like to call crypto 2.0, where we say, hey, the tech here has unlimited potential. Let's start having these tokens represent real assets and securities, shares, bonds, funds. I really hope that in 2023, we'll see major companies start to tokenize their own shares and securities in this way, so that we can both do what crypto is always supposed to do, financial inclusion, and we can start to really explore how can we bring some of the innovation we see in crypto around business models to the traditional finance industry.
Yes. Kevin, do you want to go next?
Yeah, for me, the biggest wish I have is that more, as I understand, more and more players are joining into the industry, and then of course, I would say, with all these new eco players coming in, guys like Adrian, Ming-Chek, and even Henry, right? Well, we all work together as an ecosystem. So the more, two sides of it, the more the ecosystem players understand what we can do together rather than looking at a competition or whatsoever, is actually all value added, like to all our industry right now. That's one. The second thing is that for the market, for the public to understand, to start to move away, actually, right, from the thinking about, digital asset is just a form of investments, it's just a get rich quick scheme and all this and that. We got to move from there. There is a lot of utility and there is a lot of opportunities that we are working on. So I think, yeah, exciting times ahead, and hopefully 2023 is the right time for it.
Thank you. Ming-Chek or Adrian?
Yeah, sure, I can. Personally, I really support a facilitative approach taken by IBFC and also FSA. I do hope that the regulatory body can also take actually a more proactive approach in charting even clearer path for new business to do business out Labuan. Because personally, we know that a lot of new business actually interested to do business in Labuan, and they are just sometimes they are uncertain as to whether how difficult to or how easy to get licenses, or whether they can get the licenses or approvals out of Labuan. I think we should provide more certainty and more support to these businesses, and definitely they will also come to Labuan.
Thank you. Adrian?
Yeah, for me, I'm looking at the outlooks where the investment into insurtech globally in 2021 is 2021 is more than 15 billions. And come to 2022, the investment have, I said, June, first half of the year is close to 5 B. So in 2022, I believe the amount will double and triples, as there's a lot of potential based on what the two speakers have been sharing with us today. So, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you everyone for being on this panel. And, you know, clearly the key message that I'm getting anyway is that digitalization obviously is here to stay. Number one. Number two, it is for all verticals within Labuan. So the more all verticals, or I mean, all industries, whether it be trust companies or insurance companies, banks, you know, the more the Labuan ecosystem as a whole understands the potential of digitalization, the stronger the jurisdiction will be moving forward. And really, that is the future. Andreas, I know there's another question from Andre. There's another question for you with regards to Labuan structure. Someone will come back to you with regards to that. Completely out of time. Thank you so much for spending part of your afternoon with us, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Have a good afternoon for those in this time zone. Thank you.